And but
You'd think
walking
that
up and down
definitely-
steps is a problem.
Really?
Oh yeah, that they really give, you know, they could give out on me. And even on a golf course, if I take a step down into a sand trap or something like that, the leg can just give out.
On this question, I try to answer again. So far, it's fantasy until we did experiments, but we're planning on the phase 2 of this research. The final set of experiments will be with walking people, including the population of the aged and people who have a balance problem. When you explain your feelings on a golf course, on a stair, there are two possible problems. Well, actually, they're related.
Yeah.
It's your balance system and your knees.
So one's biomechanical and one's more neuromuscular.
Right. What is the reason, what is the consequence, we don't know. But definitely what we know for sure, that people lose the sensitivity of all sensory systems, including vestibular. Maybe vestibular loss and absence of correct signal or strong signal about your posture produce uncertainty on your muscles. Because you trained, you said that you're an athletic person, so all your life you relied, and it was pretty reliable and pretty good coordination between balance signal and your muscles. Now the signal is weakening or disappearing, or maybe it's a lot of noise in there. It's another possible option. With aging, it's increasing the noise inside of the system. And that's why muscles just don't know what to do. The activity of the muscle activity and reflexes, muscular reflexes, they diminished or weakening because of the absence of the balance signal.
Okay.
So that's why we're going to the next step. We're going to, on the phase 2, we want to try this device. When we will do it portable and wearable, we're going to try it on the people who have a problem with the walking. And especially when they going on a stair, or when they, what's so-called transition, when they standing from the chair and sitting in the chair. It's another dangerous situation when the people usually falling down.
I have a serious problem. Done all kinds of tests and they can't find anything wrong.
Well, let's let's be objective.
Yeah.
The aging is a very
Sure.
complex problem. We have a sensory loss, we have a demyelinization, we have a dystrophy of muscles, whatever. Call it what we don't have. I'm actually teaching every year the aging of the central nervous system and explaining to the students what's happened with the brain. Before me, it's a lot of teachers and lecturers and professors who are explaining what's happening with the vascular system, with the muscles, with the bones. So obviously it's a complex issue. But in this particular case, whatever is related with the balance, it's something that we're capable to help.
Ah, I see.
Okay?
Does that extend to? This may be getting much too complicated. To a stroke, and the person comes out of a stroke,
Sure.
having to do physical therapy that may or may not enable them to use their arm again or their leg or whatever limb becomes affected by it. Now, is that? I mean, without getting too complicated, is that? It's not all vestibular.
Well, it's actually easy to answer because about 2 days ago we have a specifically seminar about biomedical engineering and involvement in the future vision how the biomedical engineering help the people with rehabilitation, especially with the stroke patients. And we're pretty much sure that Paul probably better explain it because he involved in the project with rehabilitation after stroke. It's one of the layer of the problem. It's emotional involvement of the patient, how to motivate the patient to do that. It's one of the story, and Paul can explain it better. In our case, yes, indeed, we can help the people who have a problem with the balance because the limbs are numb or information is not complete, not full. Theoretically, yes. Practically, before I do experiment, I cannot do the answer.
But isn't it
Right.
true that some of the early experiments that Paul did with the Pong game?
Yes.
I don't know if you know
Yeah.
that, but remember the original Pong game? Explain how Paul used that
Well,
to motivate.
the story was very simple, actually. An idea was very simple. Here's a
Paul can answer the question.
Yes.
We were looking for the answer.
Pong
We were
and
also
motivation.
trying to find
What? Pong
The Pong game
and motivation.
for a stroke
What?
we had.
What? Remember the discussion you were having with her, somebody or other? You know, of why you feel motivation is such an important aspect of rehabilitation, and how the Pong game itself was.
There are a few things. One is that if rehabilitation is mechanical, it doesn't seem to have any effect. In fact, there are some very important studies by an English group, I forget, Shepherd, I think it is, who talk about the lack of carryover from the rehab in the hospital to the home. In part, this is because the approaches are not motivating. In fact, the problem is that since many therapists do not expect recovery, they transmit that negativity and really take hope away from many patients. Because what they've seen is that patients don't recover. So this is self-generating in a negative loop. So we found that when the patients are really interested in the process of recovery, not just the idea that, oh, I'd like to recover, but in what it takes to get the recovery, that they participate a lot more. So instead of saying, let's say Herring Track, which is a device that it's used for training people who stroke the arms, and they have to do it, and so if you go back and forth with the thing, instead of saying, oh, how many more times I have to do this, doc, if you hook that up to a Pong game, and now instead of thinking about this movement, they're thinking about playing the Pong game, the reaction is just the opposite. Oh, let me finish the game. I know the time is out, but let me finish the game. And it's just the opposite kind of reaction. I think that is what actually leads to more reorganization and more recovery function.
And
Well, explain it. You told a wonderful story about the patient who never moved the fingers in the 20 years.
Yes.
That's a very excellent example.
Mm-hmm. Because we had, for example, one little old man, nice little old man who had been in our Mexico project, who had his arm rather held closely for about 25 years after a stroke. And the therapist working with us wanted him to use our Pong device. And he said, no, this arm, I can't do anything with this arm. I said, come on, let me help you. So she stretched his arm out and put it on the device. And he started making little movements. And after a while, after a few sessions, he was actually making quite large movements and very much involved in the game. He loved it. He would even bring his own little favorite Velcro strap to hold his hand down on this thing because he didn't like what we had. So he said, and after a while, he told me one day, he said, look, and he moved some fingers. He said, I haven't done that in 25 years. And we hadn't trained that. We had only trained this movement, and yet he was already acquiring other movements in the recuperation process.